Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Tell you what, NBA draft deadline Wednesday night. It's funny, I mentioned this on Tuesday's Aaron Torres pod. This used to be a huge thing in college basketball. You know, we got a lot of Kentucky fans watching because we're obviously going to talk Otega Oweh. You guys remember 6, 7, 8 years ago, pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, a lot of your offseason kind of hinged on what happened on stay or go day. Doesn't really feel like it's quite the same. And even the guys that were kind of on the fence, we got clarification on really within the last couple days. Yaxel Lenenberg, Michigan, Alex Condon at Florida, Carter Knox, etc. Todd Pettiford early in the day on Wednesday. Well, I bring it up because there was one name still on the board up until just moments ago. That was Otega Oweh, Kentucky's leading scorer from this past season. You all know his name. You all know his game. We'll break it down even further. But I bring it up because he was undecided until just moments ago when, drumroll please, Otega Oweh announced he is coming back to play another year at the University of Kentucky, baby. That is right, Otega Oweh. I believe he was a breakout star this year. I think SEC Player of the Year is on the table. I think National Player of the Year is on the table. So let's go ahead and break it all down. And as always, by the way, you already know what I'm going to say. Make sure you're following our Torres on UK page for all your late-breaking Kentucky news. Oh, by the way, you already know. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt because I'll tell you this, Mark Pope has built a legit national championship contender in year 2. Hope and Pope t-shirts, AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. I know some of you hate when I do that, but listen, we got to plug the shirts, right? Anyway, Otega Oweh. So first of all, as far as the player, listen, you don't need me to tell you, but you already know. 6'4" guard. You know what I loved about him? Listen, we could talk about the stats, 16 points per game, 36% three-point shooting. But what I loved about him, that dude just showed up ready to play every single game for Kentucky this year. You know, it was a largely successful year 1 for Mark Pope, but even in those nights where, for whatever reason stuff went wrong, Otega Oweh was there. 21 points against Ohio State, 17 points at Clemson. And then what really stood out was late in the year when injuries just ravaged this team. Lamont Butler's in and out of the lineup. Jackson Robinson's in and out of the lineup now permanently with a season-ending injury. Andrew Carr in and out of the lineup. Otega Oweh was just one of those guys who always showed up every single night, 16 points per game, essentially scored double figures in basically every game. I think of Kentucky's 36 games. I think he scored a double figures in 33 of them. 20 points in the NCAA tournament, 27 against his former school, Oklahoma, in the SEC tournament. So, again, just a guy who always delivered. With that said, though, listen, the draft process was certainly interesting, right? I was one of those people. I understand. First of all, I certainly understand why he entered the draft. I think it's always good, especially for a guy going into his final year of eligibility, to just basically see what's out there, see what opportunities are presenting themselves, and then just see if, in a worst case scenario, you get in front of NBA people, people get to know you, you get to know them. But obviously in a best case scenario, things go better than expected. And to Otega Oweh's credit, I think things did largely go better than expected. We talked about it on Tuesday's show, but on Tuesday's show, we mentioned this was a guy who goes to the NBA draft combine, scores in double figures in both games. I think most people felt like he was one of the big winners of the process. And even though it didn't result in him staying in the draft, I think he put his best foot forward. And I think he is a guy that is absolutely on NBA radars. So it was a successful process for him. By the way, I give Mark Pope a ton of credit. Basically told the kid, take as much time as you need. I saw this quote in the lead up to Otega Oweh's decision on Wednesday, where Mark Pope said the most important thing is, where is his heart? That's really the most important thing. He's had good progress in workouts. He's getting incredible feedback that's really been positive from teams. There is a space for him in that league at some point, so it's going to be where his heart is. That's courtesy of Daryl Bird at the Cat's Paws. And so, listen, I give Mark Pope credit for giving him his time. I give Otega Oweh for checking out every avenue possible. But he is coming back, and it is officially go time for the Kentucky Wildcats. Okay, so first of all, I just said this off the top. I think when we start talking about preseason SEC Player of the Year, I think Otega Oweh's got to be in the short discussion, right? I mean, you look at all of the talent that has been lost across this conference. Auburn losing basically everybody, including the SEC Player of the Year, Janai Broome. Alabama losing Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, etc. Tennessee losing, we think, Sakai Ziegler. We'll see about that. Chaz Lanier, etc. There's a lot of guys and there's a lot of new guys in this league, but you start talking about the impact guys that have been here year over year. Todd Pettiford's there, but probably Otega Oweh, and that is because, really talented player who I think will take a leap, not only in his second year in the SEC, but I think as importantly, his second year in Mark Pope's system, and I think really his second year in a system that accentuates what he does. Listen, I'm not here to tear down Porter Moser, whatever, at Oklahoma where Otega Oweh played, but I think it's kind of noteworthy that Otega Oweh leaves, turns into one of the best players in the SEC. Milos Uzan, of course, was there a year ago as well. He leaves, is a key part of Houston's Final Four run, one of their most important players. And so it's not just Otega Oweh being a second year in Mark Pope's system and just being more familiar. I think it's more about just in a system that fits him and what he does well. And I cannot wait to see what it actually looks like. Bigger picture, I'll say this. Kentucky is going to be so freaking good this year. And listen, by the way, I'm going to say something. Everyone's going to get mad at me. Oh, Torres, you flip-flop too much, this and that. I know I said like literally 3 days ago when Carter Knox came back to Arkansas, I said, I think Arkansas is the team to beat in the SEC. And I felt that way most of the offseason. But the more, when you actually look at Kentucky's roster on paper, it is unbelievable. Top 5 roster. And I think there's no doubt about it. A legit national championship contender. When I update my top 25, they are a top 5 team. And yes, you can criticize Torres in the comments section. I am flip-flopping. New information equals new opinion. I think Kentucky's officially the team to beat in this league because the one thing that stands out to me, and this is something, we've talked about a ton, so forgive me. But at the same time, what stands out to me about this Otega Oweh decision, and really this 2026 Kentucky roster in general, so big, so athletic, so tough. We've talked about it a lot, but Mark Pope, listen, I give him credit, right? Because it's not just what you do when you have success. How do you handle the best moments of your career? But what happens not only when you have adversity, but when things don't go your way. And I think Mark Pope realized, hey, there was a certain way I was building a team at BYU, a certain way I was building a team even in the Big 12 in that first year at BYU. And I tried to build a team very similar in the SEC. And at the end of the day, it sort of worked out. We were really good when we were healthy. But there are some things that we need to improve. And what clearly has been improved is the depth and the athleticism of the team that they have. Putting aside Otega Oweh, Jalen Lowe, listen, I really like him as a point guard. And I think his best days as a point guard are ahead. I thought it was very interesting during the draft process. Mark Pope basically said, look, Jalen Lowe's another guy who went through the process, averaged 17 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists per game at Pitt. And what's worth noting, wasn't playing with players as good as he will at Kentucky. That's not a knock. That is just a reality. So all of a sudden, some of those efficiency percentages, shooting percentages should go up. Assist rate should go up because he's simply going to be playing with better players. We know about Otega Oweh. Denzel Aberdeen, to me, is another one. And I'm not just trying to gas these guys up because they're committed to Kentucky, but Denzel Aberdeen, the stats, again, speak for themselves. Yes, he was Florida's sixth man. Yes, he did not start a ton. But in games in which he started for Florida last year, it was about 6 games when he started because of injuries. 14.5 points per game, 41% shooting from 3. That is a dude that can step in to Kentucky and be an immediate contributor, an immediate scorer. And I think, again, the thing is the size and athleticism on that perimeter, not only offensively, but defensively as well. Then you go to the paint, and goodness gracious, this team, there's a lot there. Mo Diabate, I've said it a million times. He was one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball this year. I think the term warrior maybe gets a little bit overblown. in basketball and in college basketball and whatever. But I just bring it up because to me, he is a guy that, like I said, I just think that when I look at him and what he did this past year at Alabama, I think he's going to be a fan favorite because he's one of these guys that you can't, you can't just determine who he is and what he does by looking at a stat sheet. He plays so hard. He's so tough. He's so good. He's so athletic. And I think he is going to be an X factor for them. Just a guy that can get you a double-double on any given night. Doesn't necessarily have to score a lot to impact games. He was great in Alabama's win at Rupp last year. He was great during Alabama's Elite Eight run. I think he's going to be a star. You know who else is going to be a star, assuming his health? Jaden Quaintance. We had him on the show a few weeks ago. Listen, I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but, I think there's a little bit of pushback about what Jaden said on this show about, is he really going to be ready for the start of the season? Listen, I'll leave that up to him and his doctors, but they are not going to rush him back. Mark Pope said we're going to go as fast as we can to make sure he's as healthy as we can. When he comes in, I think he might be the best big man in the SEC. I mean, listen, kid averaged 9.5 points, and I don't even remember the stats. What was it? 9.5, 8, and 3 blocks as a 17-year-old in the Big 12 last year. Like, it's one thing to put up stats like that, and I'm looking it up right now. 9.5 points, 7.9 rebounds, 2.5 blocks. It's one thing to put up those stats, period. It's another thing to put up those stats as a 17-year-old in the Big 12, the second toughest conference in college basketball in that last year. You add in Brandon Garrison, who I think is going to be much improved. All the workout videos this summer seem to indicate that he is ready. I mean, think about just that 6 that I just told you about. That 6 of Otega Oweh, Brandon Garrison is the key returnees, Jalen Lowe, Jaden Quaintance, Mo Diabate, and also, who am I missing here? I said Brandon Garrison. So the 3 guards and the 3 bigs. So Quaintance, Garrison, and Mo Diabate. Now I'm confusing myself. Jalen Lowe, Otega Oweh, Denzel Aberdeen. And that's just your top 6. That doesn't include 3 elite high school prospects. Of course, Braden Hawthorne, who just committed. Jasper Johnson, who I think is one of the most underrated players in this class. Malachi Moreno. You listen to Mark Pope. He seems to think that Malachi Moreno is an ascending star. You add in, by the way, a couple key returnees outside of Garrison and Otega Oweh with Colin Chandler and Trent Noah. And I think the guy that's getting lost a little bit in all this, Andriza Jelovic, of course, one of the top international players coming to college as well. Haven't even mentioned our buddy Reed Potter, who was also on the show a few weeks ago. 7'1" dude who's probably your 13th or 14th guy. Not bad. Shout out Mark Pope. He gets the job done. And I'll tell you, you look at that roster. I'm just telling you, you put it on paper, it matches up with everybody. Now, are they going to win a national championship? That'll get determined. But I will tell you, in my way too early top 25, they match up with anyone on their schedule, and it's probably the toughest schedule in college basketball. St. John's in Atlanta, Louisville in Louisville, the SEC. What else am I missing? Michigan State, Gonzaga. I can't even remember all the games. There's a big one that I know that I'm missing. Purdue in an exhibition game. Kentucky is going to be so good. This is so big. Congrats, Kentucky fans. Celebrate. Crack open that bottle of bourbon because it is a day to celebrate. I think you have a team good enough to win the SEC. And I certainly think you have a team good enough to win the SEC. I think you have a team good enough to win the national championship as well. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos, even in the offseason going up every single day. We'll start to transition more to football, but make sure you're subscribed. Follow Torres on UK. By the way, if you're an advertiser, I mentioned those Kentucky bourbon companies. Hit me up, Aaron Torres, podcast questions at gmail.com. Let's get your logo right there. Appreciate your support.